We have an expert panel for you on bringing new possibilities to the entertainment industry with blockchain. Your moderator is Ivan LILJEQVIST, blockchain consultant and developer, famous blockchain YouTuber with millions of views. Please welcome Ivan. And Chris Ellis, angel investor and blockchain pioneer, director at IvanOnTech, advisor at InMusik. Please welcome Chris. Stephen Brett, investor, founder and CEO at InMusik, blockchain ecosystem supporting music industry. Please welcome Stephen. Austin Anderson, co-founder and CEO of Rupie Network, software engineer with 10+ years of experience. Please welcome Austin. Christian FERRI, investor, president and CEO of BlockStar, executive director at Blockchain Compliance Alliance. Please welcome Christian. And John Marchesini, co-founder and Blockchain Beach digital media publication, covering blockchain news, events, DApps, and token economics. Please welcome John. Thank you. John, sorry I butchered your last name.
All right, welcome back, guys. Welcome back from lunch. Hope lunch was good. And now it's all about entertainment, how blockchain can be used in entertainment. And I can start by introducing myself. IvanOnTech, I do YouTube, started as a developer, worked for Ericsson for several years. Technology has always been my passion, discovered Bitcoin in 2013, and I'm in love with blockchain since 2013. And my YouTube journey started last year, and it's been an amazing ride, almost 200,000 subscribers. We do blockchain education. We also consult and develop blockchain solutions for companies in Sweden. And we have this amazing panel right here. Gentlemen, very welcome. We'll talk about gaming. We'll talk about video. We'll talk about music. Also, we'll talk about adult content, because, believe it or not, very important in our industry. And guys, can you please introduce yourself? What are you doing, and what is your name?
My name is Chris Ellis, and I'm the CEO of AudioCardio. We are a digital therapy to protect and strengthen your hearing.
Hey everyone, I'm Stephen Brett, CEO and co-founder of InMusik. And InMusik is an ecosystem that's built on blockchain that integrates DRM solutions into streaming platform, which is designed to kind of reward everybody for their contribution to content and successful content.
My name is Austin Anderson. I am the CEO of Rupie. We're a collaborative game development platform focused on talent. I was at LinkedIn for 5 years previous to this, and excited to be here.
Hey everyone, my name is Christian FERRI. I'm the president and CEO of BlockStar, an advisory and capital fundraising firm out of San Francisco. We've been advising and helping companies in the media space to launch their token offerings and consult and post-ICO as well.
And I'm John Marchesini. I'm one of the co-founders of Blockchain Beach. Blockchain Beach is a digital media publication located out of Santa Monica, California, covering the emerging blockchain technology space.
Awesome. So the first topic of today is, what is the actual use case for blockchain in entertainment? And let's start with InMusik, guys. Stefan. What is missing in the current entertainment industry? What's wrong with Spotify? What's wrong with Apple Music? Why do we need, for example, InMusik? And why do we even need blockchain?
Great question. Well, there's 3 different dynamics that I see that work with this. And I think if you need to create an ecosystem or solve the entire the problems in the industry, you need to look at each individual piece and then do a symbiotic around that. So I think the industry, the record labels, the publishers, I think DRM, maybe Chris can talk about that as well, but DRM is digital rights management is a great solution that's done by blockchain. So basically putting the licensing directly into the blockchain, so who gets paid what, where, and how, can be just built directly into blockchain so it becomes automated and significantly reduces the inefficiencies that exist around the industry at this moment. I think for the fan space and then the artist space, let's come to the artist first. At the moment, I mean, they just don't get paid enough for what they do from streaming. I think it was Peter Frampton just last week had a post on Twitter mentioning that he had 55 million streams, and yet he got paid $1,700. So I think no matter whatever way you cut that, it just doesn't seem to add up. So I think blockchain is starting to help companies think of new business models and new ways to generate revenue around the space. And then partly that can come from the fan engagement. So fans, I think at the moment, we're limited. We love having $9 a month to pay for Spotify and having all the music that we want to consume. That's absolutely brilliant, of course. But we're limited to $9 spend per month on content, unless we're going to see a band live, for example. But how often does our favorite band arrive in our town? So I think there's ways to actively involve the fans in the success of content by asking them to maybe do a token vote, which has a monetary value assigned with that. Maybe it's a better curation system. Maybe it'll generate more revenue for the industry as a whole. But I think from the music perspective, there's 3 pretty strong use cases for blockchain that'll help solve some problems.
And so to summarize, number 1, digital rights. Number 2, so that the artists actually get paid more, you remove middleman. Then number 3, you have an ecosystem where fans get engaged.
Yeah, that's it.
And that is the case for music. What is the case for gaming, Rupie Network? What are you guys building and why are you needed in this space?
Yeah, so gaming is pretty interesting. I mean, overall, it's a $130 billion market, which is pretty massive. Gaming talent alone is a $3 billion market. And so I think one of the major issues in gaming specifically is it's very similar to in music. Royalties distribution is a big deal. Artists don't get paid. A lot of times they're contracted out of shops. And then ultimately, there's no downstream revenue for the creations that they make. And also crowdfunding is broken. There's a lot of different issues that exist in gaming. And DRM is another one that's huge as well. But yeah, ultimately it's about people who contribute to games. And so Rupie is a community focused on helping those who collaborate and create to get rewarded properly, right? And right now it's kind of an unfair system. And so blockchain really affords us this ability to kind of create a registry for accountability and royalty split and in that distribution that I was talking about. And also game distribution is a big deal too. So distribution, I think downstream royalties for artists, and also DRM, I think those are the big issues right now, I think, in gaming.
Mm-hmm. But we mentioned the fact that, for example, fans get more engaged. You as a fan can vote. At the same time, it is a huge barrier to entry, user interface. I need to manage my private keys. People lose their private keys all the time. So will it even work, do you think? I mean, how will people actually participate in those ecosystems that you both mentioned?
I think from a music perspective, I kind of see music, like everybody loves music. Everybody listens to music and consumes music pretty much on a day-to-day basis. And I think music, if the user experience is done really well, could actually be a gateway for the mainstream to get into crypto in the first place. Because, you know, for certain models may mean that you're paying $9 a month to subscribe to content, but in the back end, cryptocurrency is being exchanged. And then introducing, like we all play games and there's point systems in games, bringing it into the mainstream in that kind of way might actually remove that barrier for entry to a significant extent. But I guess a lot of user testing needs to be done to figure that part out. But I think you're right. It revolves around the user experience and making it seamless for people.
And John, so you have experience from Hollywood. You're also head of Blockchain Beach, a media outlet. How can you say, how can blockchain be used in order to help video? Video content, video creators, video distribution. What is the use case for blockchain?
Yeah, I've been working in digital media for the past 10 years, and one of the things that I've learned is that ad-supported digital media, especially video, is fundamentally broken. YouTube and Facebook have around 90% of their overall advertising market right now, and they're squeezing content creators like YouTube stars like Ivan. Ivan and other content creators may only get up to 30% or less for each pre-roll ad that's served on their platform. So knowing that ad-supported model is broken, content creators are starting to look at other economic models, and having the blockchain technology is going to be able to help facilitate some of those new economic models that's going to allow the audience to compensate content creators directly.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that a little bit. So I think the approach for building these platforms ultimately and fundamentally has to change. As a business, as somebody who's, I've ramped and shipped products to millions, tens of millions of people at various companies, and there's certain requirements. Speed is a huge requirement, obviously, right? Availability, uptime, that sort of thing. And right now, building fully decentralized applications has this baggage, and the baggage is there's a lot of friction. It's high friction for the user base, and so I think that's one of the main focal points about what we're trying to do in terms of solving that. And there's some ways to do that, right? Like side chaining, et cetera. to reduce cost and also increase speed. But I think we all know that one of the big issues with decentralized applications is the lack of user base. So that's one of the big questions that still needs to be answered is like, yeah, you can build this glorious thing around technology, but you're not building it for the human experience. And because of that, and I think we saw this in the during the .com bubble too, is just people wanted to take a stake. Like, I'm just gonna participate in this somehow, right? Because it's trendy. But you have to really dig deep, and there are established rules about building enterprise software that exist outside of this little bubble. And you kind of have to look at what that is and compare it against what your current trajectory is and say, what is it that we need to change, and be completely honest with yourself about that, right? Like, you know, will this actually appeal to my user base? Will I get users if I build this? Yeah, you can spend $10 million, but if it's a clunky system, it takes 10 minutes to transact, then it's going to be difficult to get adoption. So I think adoption is a big one.
It's fun how immediately we started, you couldn't release a movie or music by going through the big labels and the big brands. And then we had YouTube to disrupt the place, but now the YouTube and Spotify represent the majority, right? So it's interesting how we went to basically centralization to decentralization with the cloud and internet to now, again, centralizations, you know, through Spotify and YouTube, right? I think YouTube is pulling in 1.8 billion users, which is about 16% of the world population. And, so that's massive centralizations. And I agree with you. I think there are three major use cases for blockchain being the media. Although I think that the first two can be done through traditional clouds, technology that we had today, right? Splitting up the royalties and all those kind of things. I think the major use case in my mind for blockchain is digital rights. Something that's very hard to do. We've seen Spotify and acquire Media Chain last year because they had lawsuits for some of the issues around paying royalties and not, Spotify didn't know who actually owned the right to certain songs, right? It's not that we're paying, it's just it's hard to track. So I think to me is like a database actually capable to keep track of those rights. In this case, a blockchain, a private blockchain, can actually do wonder for the entire ecosystem, and not only protect the players in the space, and also ensure that people are getting paid properly, but also will expand the market. More and more artists will get into it, and more labels will get into the space, saying, "Okay, I'm not going to be, sued because I can't keep track of this, or I have to have an expensive department for accounting or record keeping to make sure that I have the right records in place," which increases the barrier to entry, which is good for some players. But real democratizations are lowering those barriers to entry, allowing everybody to get in, provide value, and get benefits out of it.
And just to get back to what you said before, Austin, when it comes to the user base, if you look at the numbers of how many people actually use blockchain dApps for the past 24 hours, the numbers are very depressing. It's a few hundred. And the top dApps have maybe over 1,000, and those dApps are decentralized exchanges. And so how can we really accelerate this change? And I have an idea, and it has to do with adult industry, because they pioneered online payments. They pioneered a lot of other technologies that maybe wouldn't even be as popular as they are today. And so we, for example, have Verge. We have Tron also collaborating with Pornhub, which is, of course, a very significant player. And I know, John, that you have some ideas about that. What is the future of mass adoption, and how can crypto be adopted? Because something else that is very important, we heard in the panel before about PayPal, how they played this game with adult industry. So what is your view?
I mean, microtransactions or micropayments are going to be absolutely critical to enhancing a more interactive television experience. You've got, I'd say it's going to be a combination between live streaming video and then the micro payment transaction infrastructure. So when you go down the list of companies, and I'm speaking from Southern California, there is one that sticks out, and that is a company called SpankChain. That it's led by he's Their CEO is formerly of Consensus, who worked with Joe Lubin, and they are innovating on the Ethereum blockchain in terms of the micropayment transactions. They have a working mainnet right now, and they are actively soliciting talent to go on their platform and be compensated directly. So when you look at the revenue model for a company like that, they're charging talent only 5%, whereas traditional live streaming networks are charging 50%.
So I think it's a great question, Ivan. I don't think it's actually very much just related to media. I think it's an ecosystem issue. We've been really keen now on thinking about scalability with sharding, with like Ethereum is not scalable and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that it's less than 1% of the populations, actually less than 0.5% of the world populations are actually using any sorts of cryptocurrencies and blockchain. So that to say is that if you want to kind of really achieve mass adoptions, it starts with security. And the reason why that is because it's human nature. How many of you ever heard of Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? The 7 needs, right? Which one is the first one? Safety. I asked this question at a different event and they say Bitcoin. I was like, definitely not. Good try though. Safety. Why? Because if you have safety, you don't think you're going to get killed tomorrow, right? You have energy and hopes to kind of do something else. So the first thing that needs to happen in the space for crypto and media and all the other different verticals to kind of prosper, in my mind, is a secure system. Not just at a protocol layer, but everywhere in the value chain, just like the SSL network in the web, right? Web 3.0, where you have wallets, you have exchanges, you have all sorts of connections connected from a security standpoint. Once people get comfortable and trust the system, right, they'll start play with it and can put their money in and start kind of do micropayments to acquire content online, right? And so they will start kind of playing the system. The problem with that is that I cannot buy content on a DApp media platform that will cost me $5 today, and it will cost me $50 tomorrow, right? So the fluctuations here is a real key. That's why after security, it's really important that we have a stable asset that we can use as a currencies to make purchases that are constant, right? Once you have security and stability, you now get the masses involved because people say, okay, I trust the system, I'll buy DApp content, media content, movies, films on the blockchain. I know that $5 today will be $5 tomorrow, the price won't change. Now we'll start thinking about scalability, and that's when sharding and plasma will come into play, and now you have 20, 30% of the populations coming in, so.
And just to get back to scalability, currently it's very hard to build a totally decentralized solution because of scalability, because of user interface. So some projects do trade-offs. Maybe you do something off-chain, maybe you do side chains. And I have a question to you guys from InMusik. How do you reason about this, and what path do you think is the most viable?
That's a great question. When you look at, say, Ed Sheeran, last year had 1.8 billion streams just on one song. How do you pop that on blockchain if you need to track that? So I think compromises have to be made. You can't do that on the Ethereum network right now. So, sidechain and multiple sidechains is a solution for that. It's definitely a compromise that can be made. And then also, I think, this is a problem that exists right now. And fingers crossed, like the IOTA guys and the different DAG solutions are going to work in the future, and then scalability starts to become a thing of the past. But right now, I think sidechaining seems to be the solution for us. I'm not sure there's any other way to go about it.
And the Rupie network, how do you solve the scalability challenges you face?
Yeah, I think I agree. It definitely takes leveraging other existing technologies and kind of creating a hybrid model and approach. I think, it's just my opinion, but I think fully decentralization is a slightly utopic view. There's just, I'm a technical CEO, so I've been engineering for about 10 years. And from a latency perspective and from inconsistent nodes, I think that things like streaming will be incredibly difficult to maintain and to keep consistent. But also, balance rate and that sort of thing, human patience is just getting less and less in attention span. And so people want things to happen instantly. And as it stands, we're not there. And there might be some magic bullet that comes in and solves a lot of that issue, but TPS and skill and latency right now are things that will destroy a business, right? So what do? You improvise and you use existing patterns and you use blockchain for very specific use cases where it makes sense technologically, and build, like I said, for the user and not build for the technology, right? Because that's something that a lot of folks are doing right now. So eventually something might come down the pipe, but at this point, like if you want to be a business and you want to use blockchain technology, definitely explore side chains, explore proof of authority systems, that sort of thing. And definitely explore SQL databases, right? I mean, it's together, it's like Captain Planet, like everything, together and combined, our powers combined, that's what will make an effective platform that people want to use.
Let's talk about the future and the visions for the future. And I want to ask Christian, you're an advisor, you work with several projects. What project are you most excited about that you work with, and what is the vision they're trying to achieve? What kind of grand vision are you guys working on when it comes to media, when it comes to entertainment? Describe for us a day in the future where we interact with media on the blockchain.
Yeah, great questions. So over the past 5 years, I've been on the board of about 60 companies, and currently on the board of 14. I think one of the projects that I think I'm really excited about, and I won't be able to share much. It's just very under wraps right now, but it's Atari. Atari will be coming out with an offering sometimes next year. And again, can't share much about it, but I think that we're having a convergence of blockchain, AI, in virtual reality. And I think the convergence of these three forces can be pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. I don't know if you guys saw the movie, what's it called?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One, right? It talks a little bit about Atari and the history. And so go watch that movie if you haven't yet. But I think it's actually quite interesting in terms of like realizing that maybe 5, 10 years, actually 5 now, but 10, 20 years from now, the world that as we know it, right, will be completely digitalized. Yeah, you say completely digitalized. Yeah. And so that will create different sort of dynamics. And if you think about not just from a gaming standpoint, but also all the different aspects of a traditional life. I'm talking about employment. I'm talking about government services. I'm talking about dating. I'm talking about all the sorts of like different realities that we live in today's life can be digitized, and all sorts of incentives can be applied there. And there might be rules that don't really apply to physics that can be implemented. New objects and shapes. I've been involved in some other projects that are trying to kind of develop new shapes in the virtual world that might have different functionalities. And so what we know today in the real world is going to be completely shifted in that digital world, and I think blockchain is going to be a big part of it.
And so one reason I can think about how blockchain can be used is, for example, I am in this virtual world and I own a house, say. This house needs to be registered on a blockchain.
Decentralized.
So have a public infrastructure. Or how else can blockchain be used? What is your vision?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Decentraland has been pioneering, right, the real estate land on blockchain. I think that's a great prime use case. There's a company that we've been talking to and helping in San Francisco, Linden Labs, that is the creator of Second Life, and that's extremely interesting to see how Second Life, is kind of propagating this virtual experience, right? If you combine that with blockchain, I think you can exponentially increase the possibilities. You said it right. You have your creator. You have a house, right? But then you can start thinking about, makers of chairs, of stages, of TVs, and so forth. You can actually have services, provisions in virtual realities paid through a blockchain ecosystem, and all sorts of other things, right? So more and more people actually starting getting involved with virtual realities, right? It's not just a bunch of Googles and shooting in a bunch of like ghosts around, right? It can really become a new part of life, where to the point, just like Ready Player One, right? We'll leave that world more than we leave today's world, the physical world.
Future of gaming does indeed seem exciting. Austin, you had something to add?
Just Roblox, amazing. They paid $70 million and two creators in payouts. That's a great example of what you're talking about. What do you think about this, Chris?
So in terms of the virtual world, you're going to start seeing things like there's another company I advise, Epic Token, and they do product placement inside these worlds to make those experiences better, make it. Without that, I don't think you're going to get the mass adoption, the real feeling of that real experience, where then we might be spending more of our time there than we are in this world.
And so when it comes to future of music and future of decentralized music, how do you think that will look like? Will blockchain projects be integrated with existing platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, or will it be a war between these traditional platforms and new platforms? And also when it comes to social media, how would that look like? Do you have any idea?
It's a great question. It's obviously impossible to predict exactly how it's going to go. I do believe, though, that the solution to this requires involving every player. So you've got to include the music industry in this, because without the majors, Universal, Sony, and Warner, you're missing out the major label content. Without the creators and the creators of content, obviously, no new content. And without the fans consuming it, I mean, arguably the most important part, we're going to be at a stalemate. So there's no industry that exists in the first place. So I think a solution, it's got to be kind of an ecosystem type thing, where all of these are symbiotic. They all work together to create some greater good. And I do see, I really hope, because I'm a musician, I'm playing guitar since the age of 12 and drums, and born into a musical family, so I'm quite passionate about this area and optimistic about it too. But I do really hope that fan participation becomes a lot more active. Like allowing fans to participate in the success of content and allowing them to be fairly rewarded. And I think that's why bringing it onto blockchain works, because it can, it's a mathematical rule that says this is how it's going to work. Here's the agreement that we've got in place. And I really hope that's the way it goes. And that will then kind of slightly integrate with other streaming platforms. It'll slightly integrate with social media, and bringing all of these pieces back together for this kind of overall solution that might work.
I wanted to add that I think fan participation will make artists far more creative. I'm afraid that when we look at these algorithms from Spotify and things like that, one summer every song is going to be a Drake song on your top 10 list, and it like singularity, even in music. And so I think that having that fan participation will really instill creativity for the artist too.
Sorry to hijack, but I think that's already happening. I mean, you kind of see, in the old days, the measure was how many records were sold, and it was a monetary exchange for each piece of content. That's disappeared now. We all pay $9 a month to stream whatever we want to. So now it's about the numbers of streaming. And while it's still an accurate measure of what people are enjoying, I think it's easier for the industry, who are all part of Spotify and all the main streaming platforms. They can kind of use that data to feed us content like our recommended lists. And really, if you're not part of the major label ecosystem already, you're not going to get a look in. It's really difficult for the emerging artists, the independents, to actually get to play in that arena. And I really hope we can do something to kind of stop that from happening, because otherwise, as Chris said, it becomes a singularity.
In terms of the current market situation, we are obviously in a bear market. People are getting a bit depressed. People are leaving the market. In a way, it's good, because good projects survive, bad projects disappear. Also, people who didn't think long-term about their presence in the market disappear as well. So how do you view entertainment industry in this bear market? How hard is it being hit? Do you feel any change yourself, your projects? And how do you intend on surviving until the next bull run, or until we see better times in the blockchain space?
Another great question. I mean, yes, it kind of sucks at the moment. There's no doubt about that. But I think those that are strategic about it and are planning for this and kind of saw that there was going to be a plateau will be the ones that survive. And I think the great projects will shine through. For us specifically, we're still fairly early stage in the raise. So we're in private pre-sale. So we're not that affected. And to be honest with you, I'd feel more sorry for the guys that have raised when everything was at a peak. And right now are panic selling because they're nervous about paying salaries next month, for example. We're in a situation where we're raising in a bear market, so therefore we know where the benchmark is.
But I mean, if they raised when the market was high, they have a lot of capital, but you don't have any capital, and it's hard to raise nowadays. So how
it's absolutely harder to raise.
So how do you mean that you are in a better position? Is it only the pressure, or is it the fact that you can build your infrastructure in a more slow pace and you don't have any time pressure on you? How do you mean?
Well, I guess it's more what we raise now is we know that it's at its low point. So if we do a raise and it's say Ethereum is coming in, we know this is going to grow. We're not, well, I can say we know for a fact, but we can kind of speculate that I think things are going to get better in the next few months. So I think it's more from like raising. If you can raise in a bear market and you're able to actually get a decent bit of cash into the bank or crypto into the bank, I think you're setting yourself up really nicely for success. Whereas if you had got it at the peak, right now it could be a very challenging period.
Awesome. Are you affected? And what is the future for gaming in this market?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, can you imagine building a company around or tightly coupled to the US dollar if the US dollar fluctuated like crypto did? I mean, it just seems like that's incredibly risky. Not only incredibly risky, but it's a direct reflection. Crypto itself and the people's perception of blockchain is a direct reflection on you. And so, yeah, for us, we've kind of mitigated that a little bit. We're marketing to the 2 billion user gaming market, not necessarily the 50 million user blockchain segment. And so I think that there's certain things that you can do to help that. If you tied yourself, then yeah, I guess like just kind of weathering the storm. But projecting yourself, I think, is another way of doing it too, of mitigating it. Like projecting your product, marketing to the general populace, to people who do music or content creators, that sort of thing, and making sure that blockchain, I think, is less of a buzzword and less of a central hub for the personification of your business, and more of an integral part of why you care about user data and how you're trying to protect users. And that's just my opinion.
Christian, all your projects, are they still alive, or any that dropped off already?
All except one. And I'm not going to say what it is, but they are. And I think, and that comes to the point that I think that the most important function in an ICO, most important role in an ICO is not the CEO, it's actually the treasurer. And the strategy they implement to make sure that the funds they actually raised are there, just like to your point. How they mitigate that fluctuations, make sure that I raised 10 million today and I'm going to find myself with 1 million tomorrow. But I'm taking the view of an advisor, right? So I'm almost like a third party. I'm almost like an observer here. And I say, obviously, you need to hire the right talent, the right treasurer. I'm not concerned about the downturn that we have. I mean, been in crypto since 2013. We had, ups and downs basically every year, right? 13, 14, 15. And it's a great way because it kind of wash out the shaky hands, right? For new money to coming in, and that's how innovations happen, right? You have these huge bursts, these huge pumps, and these huge bursts, and I think that's great. But I think if there's a company that raised money at the peak, let's say December and January, is struggling, and I know a lot of friends in the same situations, they'll have to get lean and kind of act and behave and think like a startup. Right? If you cannot pay your employee at the end of the month, you have to think about how to kind of either have them have kind of restructure some of them, or kind of delay your timeline, and manage expectation with the crowd, right? You don't have a bunch of VCs from Silicon Valley that you have to report to every Friday, but you have a community. Community is everything in the space, right? Community is your investors. Communities are your future developers, or the champions are your future customers. So communication in this case is very key, making sure that your community is happy and say, guys, we find ourselves struggling. We need to postpone our timeline, or things need to change, or we need to restructure. And the community is going to be fine as long as you're proactively communicating with it. But you have to kind of toughen up, bite the bullet, and kind of trying to make do. And there's going to be, most of the companies are not going to survive. Most of the companies are going to deliver technology that, the new Amazon, the Facebook of the future, and the decentralized world will rely themselves on. So all this tech that's been created from companies are going to fail. It's essential. It's the infrastructure needed for the future companies to adopt. So.
And John, are you affected? Blockchain Beach, Hollywood, are they still interested in blockchain even after the hype?
Yeah, I think we're in a fortunate place because a bear market for us doesn't necessarily mean low website traffic. I had a blog one time during the financial crisis, and it's amazing how much interest there is during downturns. And there's you really can't trust the mainstream media. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen the ticker on CNBC for Bitcoin. We do see a direct correlation between the price of Bitcoin and the number of inbound referrals for people looking for the price for Bitcoin. But our publication we don't really cover the rise and fall of Bitcoin. That's just not as interesting as how blockchain is going to impact these emerging verticals that we have. So I feel like we're in a fortunate place.
All right, thank you very much. We have a few minutes for questions about media, about gaming, music, video, anything related to what we have discussed. So just raise your hand if you have any questions to our great panelists. And I see a hand there in the middle. Just throw this cube and talk into the cube.
The question pertains to...
Can you talk closer to the cube? Into the microphone? Thank you.
The question, it pertains to all the YouTube creators and other folks that have a large following on those platforms like YouTube, and where they're going pertains to a new blockchain solution?
So I work with YouTube every day, and the good thing with YouTube is that YouTube actually helps you grow. And that is very hard to find somewhere else. So that is the good thing with YouTube. The bad thing with YouTube is that you are very helpless. You are at the mercy of YouTube. What if, for example, YouTube tomorrow says, you know what, no more crypto content. We don't like cryptocurrencies. Seems shady, so let's just remove all crypto YouTubers. You have no power there. And so therefore, I think the very good use case for blockchain in video creation, in YouTube, in being a YouTube competitor, is to actually decentralize your following, because that is the most important thing. Currently, we see platforms such as DLive and DTube trying to decentralize YouTube, but they're just not working as well as YouTube. You can't even compare. It's too clunky, it's too complicated. And the way I see the future of content is that you need to do half centralized. Maybe the content itself doesn't need to be decentralized. Maybe you don't have to put videos on the blockchain or IPFS, because it just doesn't work currently as good as it should. So I mean, my vision is that we need a YouTube where you put content centralized in a database, because it just doesn't work decentralized, and then you do following and monetization decentralized. That should be decentralized, and that is the most important aspect of a YouTuber. That is the following and monetization. All my videos can disappear tomorrow. I don't care about that, really. I care about the following, and I can always create new videos, and I care about monetization. But currently, I do not see any good alternatives, although there is a very good use case for that. But we're still too early. So hope that answered your question. I saw a hand there as well. So can you please just throw the cube to the person there?
How you doing? Darius Johnson. I got sent to this conference from an investor company, and my job is basically to go to all these panels and figure out if this is all bullshit or not. Like, like everyone talking, if it holds any water. And a lot of people on the stage, I noticed over the past couple of days, they use buzzwords like broken, right? You say crowdfunding's broken, right? Star Citizen, right? $39 million in crowdfunding, real money, right? How is that? What did you mean by broken by crowdfunding?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so there's a lot of distrust around crowdfunding right now in terms of how it goes. Yeah, there's like, if you look at, for instance, the Kickstarter growth over time, it's an incredibly volatile chart. There's no growth at all. And it's because what happens is, around crowdfunding specifically, you're funding projects and you're funding teams in a black box, in a vacuum. You have no idea whether or not they know what they're doing, and if then there's no accountability around delivery. Star Citizen is a great example. They essentially created their own crowdfunding, and if nobody knows, Star Citizen is a huge game. They raised plus $100 million from the community. But it is definitely not the sort of normative example of a crowdfunding campaign at all. In fact, it was kind of a monopoly. If you follow like Zip's Law, I mean, it is at the very, very top, and everybody else kind of bubbles out. Right now for games, there's an 85% failure rate for games to ship. And a lot of that has to do with the crowdfunding campaigns and just not getting discovered, not getting funded all the way, missed campaigns, et cetera. And so there's a lot of things we can do on the blockchain to help mitigate that. A lot of that has to do with escrow, peer-to-peer transactions, and also just showing that people are doing work and that teams are talented, because they are. But some, and they're not bad actors, but some aren't.
And final question for me is, I noticed that even when checking out, like if you were to buy a ticket for this BlockShow, like there's no, I didn't see a payment option for a cryptocurrency on there. You would think for a BlockShow event, there would be a crypto way to pay with crypto. I only see Alipay, credit card, and Google Pay. So does anyone have any insight on that?
Yeah, I can take that. So Stripe had originally supported certain cryptocurrencies, but they no longer do that. You know, I think with Square and the Cash App, that's going to be probably one of the the growing products in the market. But I know a lot of the the transaction payment gateways have dropped support for cryptocurrency for whatever reason or another.
Okay, awesome, thank you. And last question.
I think it's a great point. We should be able to pay in crypto for a cryptocurrency.
Right. It makes sense, right? And my last question for you is, you're with Atari. I mean, I haven't heard Atari drop since like Bushnell and Pong. So like you're telling me you're in a works for, that you tickled my brain there. You're dropping Ready Player One and words like that and getting me excited. Makes me want to throw down on Atari. Tell my investors, go big on Atari. They got something that works. But if you go look at the esports arena and all the VR they have out, the state-of-the-art VR, it all sucks, right? VR is not ready yet. That's all. VR has been a disappointment since with the Nintendo with the headset, right?
The 90s, actually, when they came out, and it was a disappointment. We had this clunky headset and everything.
Yeah, it's still a disappointment. You still get seasick from it. If you go do the movement thing in the esports arena at the Luxor, it doesn't even recognize all your movement still. And people are dropping $7,000 on that rig that doesn't work.
Yeah, we're not at the level of we think of in the movies, like 2050, right? Obviously there's going to be a path to get there. Right. You have companies like Atari and other companies that are trying to kind of get to that point, but also including AI and blockchain with it. I think the idea is to create a different ecosystem, a new reality, if you will, right? It will start being, start by being clunky, right? Like the technology that we have today, but that obviously the technology will get better and better and better and allow people to actually have fully immersive experiences that, the more immersive they are, the more will attract people to spend more time there, and that will create, the incentive and the ecosystem and so forth. So, yeah, we're not there yet, but we'll get there.
I don't want to hog out the cube, guys.
I just want to add to that, actually, just because I totally agree with you. And I think that full VR immersion and adoption is an inevitability. Humans are incredibly fallible. We have 5 senses. It's really easy to create the illusion that your consciousness is transported elsewhere and you're kind of in this immersive place. And there's a very, very clear path to get there for VR. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's going to happen.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for participation, for your thoughts, for your time. And thank you for you guys in the audience who watched and asked questions. Unfortunately, the time is out. A big round of applause for our panel. And let's meet outside if you want to meet and have more questions.
Nice throw. Thank you to all of our panelists.